and using some of the remote payment systems so that those individuals, informal or small businesses, could actually continue to trade. And of course, these were new methods. And so they took more than 21 days. So Faith is very right. And that's why I was really nodding that some of these individuals were unemployed. And we know that as a woman, sometimes you don't just look after your own household, but you look after many other households. So the strain was felt across the entire societal hemisphere or stratosphere.
Absolutely. And Ethel, I wanna stay the course with you for a moment, because you brought up some points around innovation, around strategic partnerships, visibility for not only women, but for small businesses, and really want to lean into what Standard Bank is doing to bring this gender lens into your COVID-19 business recovery strategy, and particularly from a payments and innovation lens.
I think as Standard Bank, we are constantly taking a step back and listening to customers and finding out what it is that matters to them and what matters for them to be able to trade and really be successful. So if you, like I said, Simply Blue was one. We had the COVID-19 loans. We had payment holidays as well, because we think that those may not have been products as such, but those were critical responses that made a big difference to a variety of businesses, whether you're a small business, informal business, or a woman, or even a man, to make sure that we are able to play a pivotal role in making sure that these individuals that matter so much to Standard Bank could actually have sustainability and continuity. If I think about the fact that in the first 3 months, if you had a device or a payment device from Standard Bank, you were then exempt from paying any form of rental, because really and truly, in level 5 and level 4, nobody could trade, and that was no fault of any woman or any trader for that matter. So for us, it was really starting to respond and starting to say, how can we make sure that we go beyond what our customers are expecting of us, but most importantly, beyond is enough for them to be sustainable in their businesses, and for them, once we get into level 3, to be able to trade again.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the lens of going beyond the call of just providing credit loans, of just providing a means of these organizations or these small businesses to be able to trade, but really bringing through partnerships, really bringing through innovations, spreading across these industries. You mentioned retail and hospitality, agriculture, where women really have been impacted. And to that tune, Faith, I'd love to bring you into the angle of particularly gender lens investing and group economics, and how this perspective really unfolds in the work of the Women's Development Bank and your strategy.
So basically, WDB, I mean, ever since we were created over 30 years ago, we have been focusing on providing access to finance, to women, as well as also non-financial support. For example, training, access to mentorship, especially for entrepreneurs, as well as opening up procurement channels, for women to procure from the corporate sector or formal sector. But what we have done recently, Vuyo, is that we have actually about 3 years ago, we established the WDB Growth Fund, which is basically a partnership between WDB Investment Holdings and other like-minded investors who want to make an impact. So, and this fund basically is investing in SMEs. We provide equity funding to SMEs, but on top of that, we provide the very critical non-financial support that these SMEs require. These SMEs require support around, marketing and positioning their products and businesses, support around understanding how to access large corporates like Standard Bank so that they can procure products and services. They need support around governance, putting in place the structures that are also going to make them credible as they go and approach large corporates to procure services and products from. So for WDB, I think when the pandemic hit, we were actually very fortunate because we already have got structures in place that are supporting these SMEs, obviously predominantly women-owned SMEs, to really help them to be resilient and to be sustainable. But obviously, with the pandemic, we had to also step up. We had to step up, our interventions because, some of these businesses, for example, we support a business that manufactures disposable sanitary pads, and it employs basically predominantly women. And that business relies on schools being open for them to then sell their products, through the sponsorships from the corporates. Obviously, when lockdown happened, the schools were closed and the business, could not operate. So where we had to come in, again, working with our partners in the fund, was to basically come up with innovative ways to make sure that this business does not fall. So we had to provide emergency loans, but also we had to work with the entrepreneur to give the entrepreneur that moral support, because as we all know, the world of entrepreneurship, especially if you're a one owner manager, is very lonely. You need a big sister or brother. We play that big sister. So those are the things that we had to do to make sure that that business continues to provide employment to over 40 women, but also make sure that it's got emergency funding to continue to operate beyond COVID. So those are the interventions that WDB has done with some of its investee companies to make sure that they are able to ride the very challenging COVID-19 storm.
Absolutely. And before I swing the pendulum back to Ethel, how can women or anyone essentially access the Growth Fund? Is there a website that they can visit?
Yes, there is a website that they can visit. They can visit. They can either access the website through the WDB Investment Holdings website or directly through the WDB Growth Fund. And we actually are very keen to support SMEs, and obviously, again, biased towards women-owned. But yes, we open for business. Thanks, Vuyo.
Absolutely. Well, partnerships seem to be, quite the recurring theme. But the other that I'm taking from this is the proactiveness that's required, and especially from the small business lens. And Ethel, to you, in working with small businesses, what about these small, or these sole proprietors in how they're engaging in a gender lens perspective? Because if they don't have the resources to scale or to the scale of large institutions like Standard Bank, what are perhaps 2 or 3 measures that they can start implementing that can serve their gender engagement strategy?
One of the key elements, and I think Faith said it, the sole proprietors tend to suffer a great deal. It doesn't need to be a pandemic. It could be a notion of seeing a hairdresser whose queue is so long and they can't keep up. And as a result, they lose customers in the queue before they meet up with them. So I do think that opportunity that Faith was talking about in terms of how does a small business make sure that they've got the governance structures in place, and how do they make sure that they've also got the opportunity that exists in order to lean in and partner up. We've seen it with doctors doing it all the time with locums. And so now, even in small businesses, the opportunity to have a right-hand person that you work with, to partner up with other businesses that do something similar so that you can have cross-references and together, you're a stronger might and you always have customers and therefore giving you that flow and sustainability. We also have a number of insurances in place. We saw not only the pandemic in South Africa, but we also saw the looting that took place. So how are you insured? We also saw people unable to pay some of their debt. And so when you are unemployed, do you know that you've got the insurance that exists when you got unsecured lending, such as a credit card or a loan? So those elements are so important for a sole proprietor, because your right-hand person could be your child, as a matter of fact. This pandemic saw us see parents or two owners of a business die 10 days within each other, because maybe they're exposed to individuals and could have been exposed to the virus at the same time, and unfortunately both adversely impacted. So I do think that as a bank, we are really fortunate to have a number of solutions that can help a sole proprietor, from insurance, from estate planning, from just planning your business, and just the opportunity to lean into any of our business managers or relationship managers who are able, as Faith has already mentioned, give you that different lens of a business in terms of being your big brother or big sister, who are exposed to a number of businesses that you may not be exposed to, and can give you the kind of advice that is necessary for the opportunity not only to grow, but also to have been able to sustain yourself during this pandemic.
Absolutely. And there are tons of resources that we've shared already, from Simply Blue to the Growth Fund, from the Women's Development Bank, that I'd really love the women tuning in and the thousands of them tuning in to start leaning into, because it's going to become so important to become insulated and to become proactive in how you are engaging your business recovery strategy in this COVID world. And Faith, as we lean into this data of women, I think it was Ethel who had mentioned earlier that, women who have been impacted, are disappearing off the streets, and we cannot find them because they're leaving not only the informal workforce, but the formal workforce during the pandemic, because they have been so hard hit. And my question is really in how can business recovery strategies start to include incentives for women to continue working, and also for them to build businesses, because Africa, we have the highest female entrepreneurship activity, and I think no one can rob us or deny us of this high entrepreneurial spirit that we possess on this continent.
I think there has to be very deliberate efforts to actually invest in these women, and again, this is also where big businesses and government, comes in to make sure that, there are programs that also just, are focused on enhancing sort of like the skills, both, of the entrepreneurs, so that, next time around, when another crisis comes, these entrepreneurs, are more resilient, and they also have got more in their toolkits to withstand or to overcome the challenges. But I also think, Vuyo, women themselves must also learn from this crisis. For example, we were speaking earlier about the importance of having some structures. We know that some of these companies cannot have a board with external board members, but they need to now think about how can they tap into the wider networks on a proactive basis, so that they can again leverage off the people that have got the skills, the resources, and know-how to help them to grow. So they have to reach out, because it's not just about say business or big business and government helping the women, but also the women must also take that proactive step to now reposition themselves, look for ways to invest in themselves, look for ways to also use the technology, as Ethel was saying. I mean, now the technology is there, for these, businesses to be positioned in the social media channels for growth, to market their products and also think big, because now technology actually has made the globe so small, So all of a sudden, if you are a woman, owning a business that is manufacturing T-shirts or shirts, you can actually, your market is no longer limited. You can really access, the entire globe. So those are for me, those are also sort of like the pluses or the positives actually that have come out of COVID, because all of a sudden technology is so accessible. I mean, we can see, Vuyo, TikTok, what is the sorry. So TikTok, Instagram, this is where now you're selling your products. You have to embrace technology. You can't be sitting in the corner there and be scared of technology, because if you're not in technology, if you're not selling your products or services in, within the e-commerce space, you basically are not going to be relevant. And I think, again, in Africa, we are very fortunate because we do have a very, in terms of, technology consumption, people with smartphones, we really, we're fortunate that, we've got quite a, huge adoption rates. So again, women entrepreneurs, use those opportunities. Get out of your comfort zone. It's not easy, but you need to get out of your comfort zone, embrace the new reality, because we're not going back to the world that was the pre-COVID. But this world can be scary, but also very exciting, because all of a sudden it's limitless in terms of, what you can do with your business.
Absolutely. And I think, as you're talking about thinking big and thinking global, I'm also reminded of, how women need to be at the forefront of these decisions, because we cannot be having a conversation about gender lens if we are not at the forefront and collaborating with our stakeholders, with the men, with the private sector, public sector, in order to make these decisions, which will relatively, to your point, impact how we do business, impact how we engage moving forward as a society. And I'm going to go back to the data from the Global Responsive Tracker, and it states that women's representation and leadership in about 300 of these COVID-19 task forces across 187 countries show that women are significantly underrepresented in these task forces. And as we envelope this conversation and summon your closing remarks, how do we raise the standard of representation for women, young and old, across various sectors, regions, to really take up this space of being at the forefront of these decisions, of their business strategies as entrepreneurs, as being in the public sector, being in these private institutions and organizations? What can we do? And what would be your message to the 10,000 of women and men that we've got tuned in to this virtual conference? Ethel, I'll start with you.
I think I agree with Faith. As women, we've got to be at the forefront of that which we seek as change, that which we seek as the new normal for ourselves. So I think about hybrid work. I think hybrid work has been the best thing that's happened for women. Yes, at the very beginning of 2020, it felt like the hours are longer, that we were multitasking and we had home from school. But in the end, we were able to find the hours that have the right rhythm. We were able to find the right rhythm with our families. So really and truly, I do think that with the right kind of management for hybrid and the expected hybrid working from home, whether you do a MWF Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever will be the new normal or the new hybrid of work, women will be at the very forefront as to us making the decision as to what that would look like. because gone are the days of sitting in traffic from 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock, or chasing taxi after taxi in order to get to work while worried about what time you'd have dropped off your child at creche. And then I look at another landscape. I think about one of the biggest retailers in South Africa that's starting to think about a cashier-less store where you come in, you buy, and you walk out. So a number of those cashiers are absolutely women. So I'm hoping that we are all not sitting and thinking we are going to lose our jobs. But as women, we are sitting and thinking in the world of automation, we are now going to find a particular methodology that allows us to be playing in the space of big data and being intuitive, and therefore being at the very forefront of being able to implement strategies that will make our customers grow. I do also think that while women have played a big role in a variety of ways, this is the time to learn new skills. The buildings that are standing empty, the opportunity to have robotics or automation means that we have an opportunity to learn new skills. And so maybe the advent of the way we think about leading has been changed. To Faith's thought about FANGs, which whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or even Instagram, maybe it's not about just sitting at the top table as we've always thought, but it's really being about at the forefront of user experiences, of product management, of really shaping society to have the kind of intuition that women have. There are worrying statistics. You would have seen more recently, maybe in the past 2 weeks, the number of young girls that have been pregnant between the ages of 14 to 19. And then you also have the statistics that show a number of girls that have contracted HIV, but not showing the number of men. That in itself is worrying, because then it means that some of those women will not have the support to reach their dreams. So we need society in all its form to push together and make sure that it's not only about taking a girl child to school, but it really is about making sure that we have a sound and safe society that has no room for gender-based violence, not because women are crying out, because their men are also crying out. What is a real problem is when women are highly educated and they are skilled and they are ready to move to the next level, but the men they marry will not have it. And because they will not have it, because as society we never did the right foundational investment and support, we then have a problem that results in a wife that can never reach their goals, and in children that can never have a father who can hold hand in hand with the mother or an employee or a business owner in ways that are healthy for our society. So for me, those elements are absolutely critical and pivotal. At Standard Bank, we've got ICARES, and we are able to not just isolate the employee who may be a woman, but we are able to give care across the board spectrum, because I do think that mental health is going to be critical for women to thrive. And we must tackle it head on, because most of the time women have so much going on their plate, and we've been brought up to believe that we can do it all. And so with that, Vuyo, thank you for having me here. But more than anything else, I do think that women can do it. I do think that we've got to be very ready to embrace technology, as Faith said. But most importantly, we've got to be ready to embrace new skills and absolutely believe in ourselves that we have a critical role to play in society and how we shape it and what the new skills, the new industries are going to look like. Because these past 18 months have really shown us that, yes, we'd like to be on level 1, but level 1 is going to look very different to what it looked like in 2017.
Absolutely. What a powerful way to close. And I think, to your point around the way in which we think about leading, definitely had me smiling and had Faith smiling as well. And Faith, very same question to you in terms of, as we wrap up this conversation, what we really need to think about and how we need to start re-engineering our mindsets to re-engineer this world, that this level 1 that will be entering in post-COVID?
I think we definitely need a leadership paradigm shift here, because I'm afraid, Vuyo, that I think if you look at, the representation of women, for example, at the boards of, you mentioned that there's 360, task forces that have been created globally to find solutions to this issue of, the impact of COVID, to women. And those bodies, chances are actually not representative. So my concern is that, gender equality, especially at the board and leadership position, it is still seen as a ticking box compliance exercise for you. That has to change. I think the female workforce must be seen as being integral to the sustainability and growth and success, of any country, any economy, any business. So I really think that, again, women, we have to continue to fight, unfortunately, to be represented where decisions are being made about our future. Because we're talking today about how COVID has really decimated, women, and also how it has taken backwards the progress that women had made in terms of their economic participation. But then when solutions are being designed around saying, okay, what are we going to do to make sure that, the post-COVID economy is more inclusive, there's, there's diversity around the table, we are not there. So I really think that there has to be accountability, to policymakers, to boards, to make sure that they take into account the voices of the more than 51% of the population of Vuyo. Because we know that today, as we sit here, in Africa, women hold just 12.7% of the boards in Africa. In South Africa, we're a little bit lucky. This figure is just over 20%. And globally, we know the global average is probably hovering around, 25 to 30%. Women, we are in the majority of the population. I'm hoping that COVID again is also going to make everyone wake up to say, we need, these decision-making bodies to be more inclusive. We need women here, because one of the reasons why, we're finding ourselves, where we are right now, the discussion that we're having about, why have women been impacted more negatively compared to men, is because, women have actually not been given the voice in areas or positions that matter. So we have to change that, because if we're going to now design solutions, Vuyo, that are going to work for men and women, those solutions cannot be designed by boards that are not representative. It's just not going to happen. So for me, that's sort of like one of the biggest learnings, that there has to be a different way of approaching board leadership and leadership in general. There has to be strategies. Boards must be held to account. There has to be a deliberate effort as well by these companies to really invest in leadership development, programs for women. Because again, now we've learned women, we are sort of like, in terms of our representation, we are represented very low in the corporate structure. And that's why also we have been so severely impacted by COVID. So I really think that leadership, there has to be a shift. There are no more excuses now. As Ethel was saying, women can also work from home. Women, and and productively so. So there can never be excuses now to say, oh, we cannot promote you, we cannot do this, because, you have to take some time off, you must go and look after your kids. We can do both, but also as women, we need to make sure that our partners at home also take a fair share of the work. But I really think that it's time for accountability, Vuyo. It's time for, I think the time for talk around representation and the meaningful participation of women in the economy. I think the time for talk is over, because if we carry on talking and there's another crisis, really, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? This is the time to take action. And so for me, I'm just saying, this is the great opportunity for humanity to really reset, to realize that each and every person has got value to add. We each, can contribute, to the growth of our continent, of our nations, and women must be given that opportunity to play the rightful role that that they are meant to play. So that will be my call for action. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think a great way to close this conversation is creating opportunities where women can be able to be a part of these decisions that at the end of the day are all about creating shared value. Right. And I think looking at how we could definitely think about the way that we lead. A huge thank you to our panelists, Faith Khanyile, the CEO and founding member of WDB Investment Holdings, and Ethel Nyembe, the group head of card and payments at Standard Bank Group, for this invigorating discussion. It's back to you in the studio.
Dinner time. Not without the farm. Not without water, fertile ground, or machines to plow it. Not without safekeeping. Distribution.